In the heart of the Amazon, the rain never truly stops. It falls like breath, steady, slow, endless, sliding over leaves that gleam in the dim green light. Beneath them, tiny bodies move, gold, blue, and black, each smaller than your thumb, yet bright enough to burn in memory. Their colours are not decoration. They are warnings, silent as thunder, ancient as the forest itself. Within their thin, glistening skin lies a secret powerful enough to stop a human heart before it has time to panic. They sing for mates, for territory, for life, but their songs carry a shadow, a beauty so dangerous it cannot be touched. Tonight, we follow that sound into the wet air, the shimmering leaves, and the quiet promise of death hidden in colour. The rainforest never rests. Even when the air stands still, the world underneath it moves, dripping, breathing, watching. In this green labyrinth, sunlight falls in trembling patches, filtering through curtains of vines and mist. Beneath that broken light live the jewels of the jungle, creatures so vivid that the eye can hardly believe they are real. Gold, cobalt, and black, each colour more brilliant than the last, each warning more urgent. They are the poison dart frogs, the small shining hearts of the Amazon, where beauty and death share the same skin. To the untrained eye they seem harmless, almost ornamental, but the forest knows otherwise. It has learned the hard way that the brighter the colour, the sharper the consequence. Among these radiant assassins, two reign as emblems of contradiction: the golden poison dart frog of Colombia and the blue poison dart frog of the Guiana Shield. Both are small enough to fit inside a child's palm, both carry toxins capable of silencing life within minutes, and both shimmer with a kind of sacred arrogance, as if nature itself decided to test how far beauty could go before becoming lethal. The people who live beside them know that line well. For centuries, the Embra tribes of Western Colombia have whispered the frog's true power into the tips of their arrows, turning each tiny life into a weapon that outlives the hand that threw it. Hunters speak of these frogs with reverence, almost apology. The frogs are never killed for sport, never touched without purpose. Their poison is borrowed, not stolen. The forest around them hums with a humidity that feels alive. The air is so thick with moisture that breathing it is like swallowing mist. Somewhere beneath the low drone of insects, a single note pierces through, sharp, deliberate, repeated. That is the voice of Philobates terribilis, the golden poison dart frog, announcing its existence with a sound that belies its size. Barely 5 centimeters long, its body glows with a metallic radiance somewhere between liquid gold and the yellow of dying fire. It does not blend in. It refuses to. Every movement seems designed to say, "Look at me and remember what I can do to you." Its skin is smooth, glistening with moisture that never quite dries. Within that sheen lies one of the most potent natural toxins known to science, batrachotoxin. A dose smaller than a grain of salt can stop the transmission of nerve signals, locking the body in an eternal spasm until the heart ceases. There is no antidote, no medicine to undo the silence it brings. Scientists estimate that one adult golden poison dart frog carries enough toxin to kill 10 grown humans or more than 20,000 mice. Yet the frog itself remains unharmed by its own weapon, living a life both ordinary and extraordinary among the roots and fallen leaves of the Pacific rainforest. To see one in its native world is to feel a jolt of disbelief. It sits on a wet log, motionless, but alive with colour, the surrounding greens and browns falling away in submission. Light clings to its back like molten metal, and every breath it takes seems to make the jungle pulse with it. When it moves, it hops with measured calm, never hurried, as if aware that nothing in the forest would dare touch it. Predators learn quickly. A snake that tries once does not try twice. The lesson is written on the tongue. The Embra people call it kokoi, and they understand it as both curse and gift. When hunters prepare their blowguns, they search carefully for these frogs during the wet season. They do not stab or crush them. Instead, they heat the tips of their darts and gently press them against the frog's skin, allowing the toxin to transfer with the rising steam. The frog is released afterward, unharmed, to continue its glowing patrol through the undergrowth. The weapon, however, is forever changed. A single dart once coated can bring down a monkey or bird within moments. This relationship, part reverence, part necessity, shows how the boundaries between human and creature blur in places where survival demands respect. For scientists, Philobetys terribilis remains a biological marvel. Its poison has fascinated pharmacologists, who dream of using its chemistry to design painkillers more powerful than morphine yet safer for the body. How an animal this small can produce such potency has long been a mystery. Research suggests the frogs do not create the toxin themselves. Instead, they accumulate it from their diet, tiny beetles of the genus Choracine, which carry the precursor chemicals of batrachotoxin. In captivity, where such beetles are absent, the frogs lose their toxicity entirely. They become harmless reflections of their wild selves, golden still, but without the fire beneath the colour. It is a reminder that even poison is part of an ecological conversation, one that stops when we remove the voice of the forest. And yet, to stand in the drizzle and watch this frog breathe is to understand something deeper about danger and beauty. The shimmer of its skin under rainlight, the steady pulse of its throat, the way water beads and rolls off as if repelled by its own perfection, these details hypnotize. It is the paradox of the natural world condensed into one living thing, that what kills can also be magnificent. To the camera lens, it is flawless. To the fingertip, fatal. If gold is the colour of warning, then blue is the colour of deception. Move northeast, across rivers, and into the lowland forests of Suriname, French Guiana, and northern Brazil, and the air changes. The canopy grows thinner, the soil redder. Here lives another masterpiece of chemical warfare, the blue poison dart frog, Dendrobates tinctorius azureus. Where the golden frog glows like the sun, this one gleams like the deep ocean seen through lightning. Its skin is an impossible shade of cobalt, speckled with irregular black markings that look like constellations trapped beneath glass. At first glance, it seems almost artificial, too pure in colour, too smooth in motion. Under the filtered daylight of the rainforest, its blue glows faintly even in shadow, the kind of luminescence that makes the mind think of gemstones rather than flesh. Unlike its golden cousin, this frog's toxin is less immediately lethal to humans but still formidable to anything that tries to eat it. The alkaloid compounds on its skin cause paralysis and cardiac arrest in small predators. Local insects that crawl across it die within minutes. Its body design is a triumph of symmetry and precision. A rounded head, short snout, large dark eyes that absorb rather than reflect the light. The limbs are slender but strong, covered in microscopic pads that cling to bark and leaf like invisible glue. Each movement is deliberate, a dance between grace and survival. The frog spends much of its day among the fallen leaves and mossy roots, hunting ants, mites, and small beetles, creatures that feed it both energy and toxin. Its call is softer than that of the golden poison frog, a low, vibrating trill that sounds less like a warning and more like the whisper of an electrical current. Where the golden species radiates dominance, the blue carries melancholy. It is as if the forest painted its sadness onto this creature, an echo of rain trapped in skin. The blue frog is fiercely territorial, defending patches of ground barely a few meters wide. When rivals approach, males rise on their toes, inflate their throats, and emit a deep buzz that trembles through the leaf litter. If that fails, they wrestle, tiny bodies locked in silent combat until one yields. Watching them is like witnessing miniature gladiators, their glowing skins slick with humidity, their ferocity hidden beneath elegance. In captivity, these frogs have become icons of exotic beauty. Zoos and aquariums showcase them under artificial lights, behind glass that cannot convey the weight of rainforest air. Yet even there, something of the wild remains, the stillness before a jump, the gleam of dew on skin. The pulse of ancient defense mechanisms evolved long before human fascination. Breeders handle them with gloves, not because of immediate danger, but out of respect for the memory of their toxin. The myth persists that within those small frames sleeps the same force that has humbled predators for millennia. The indigenous people of Suriname once regarded blue frogs as forest spirits, symbols of boundaries not to be crossed. They believed that to dream of a blue frog was to receive a warning, that something beautiful in one's life carried hidden peril. Modern biologists might not share the superstition, but they understand its logic. Nature uses beauty as camouflage for consequence. The dazzling skin of Dendrobates azurus is not an invitation, it is a neon sign flashing "stay away." When rain falls on these frogs, it turns their bodies into mirrors. Drops bead up and roll away, carrying fragments of reflected sky. Under a slow-motion lens, each movement looks choreographed by water itself. The frog pauses, head tilted upward, throat pulsing with the rhythm of its call. Around it, the forest breathes in sync, the sound of dripping leaves, distant thunder, unseen wings. Every detail feels ancient, rehearsed over millions of years of evolution, where colour became language and survival became art. Both the golden and the blue poison dart frog stand at the edge of contradiction. They are small, defenceless in shape, yet armoured in chemistry, delicate yet immortal in warning. They remind us that life's most dangerous forms rarely roar, they shimmer. Their brilliance does not invite touch, it demands distance. In their presence, the line between admiration and fear blurs, and we are forced to confront the truth that beauty in nature is never free from cost. As night approaches, the frogs retreat beneath the leaves. Their colours fade into shadow, but memory does not. Somewhere in the darkness, the forest continues its dialogue between predator and prey, between survival and surrender. The rain thickens. A single golden body glows faintly under a leaf. A blue one hums quietly by a stream. Together they embody a secret older than words, that life, in all its brilliance, owes its persistence to the fine art of warning. The jungle is a theatre of warnings. Every inch of it whispers instructions written in colour, sound and motion, signals that decide who survives and who disappears. Some creatures flash their danger like lightning, others hide it in silence. Among the amphibians, no language is clearer than that of poison, yet not all who bear it are killers. Some are cautionary notes in the vast symphony of the rainforest, guardians of equilibrium rather than engines of destruction. Others, however, become mistakes that nature never intended, intruders that unravel what once held balance. Two such stories unfold on opposite ends of the earth, one small and cautious, shimmering in gold and black along Colombia's coasts, the other bloated and relentless, spreading across Australia's plains like an ecological fever. The black-legged poison dart frog and the cane toad are not merely animals. They are moral parables written in skin and toxin, living proof that danger comes in different forms, one born to warn, the other born to invade. The black-legged poison dart frog, Philobates bicolor, lives in the lowland rainforests of western Colombia, near the Pacific shores where mist lingers like breath between trees. It is smaller than a human thumb, no longer than 5 centimetres, yet the brightness of its body is impossible to ignore. Its torso glows a fiery orange or yellow, its limbs dipped in ink black like gloves. This dual tone is not random. It is an ancient flag of survival, a visual boundary drawn between itself and anything foolish enough to touch it. The forest reads the message instinctively. Snakes avert their tongues. Birds shift their eyes away. Even the ants seem to step around the body rather than over it. In the hierarchy of warnings, this frog is not the loudest, but it is perfectly understood. Seen up close, the frog's beauty is unsettling. Its skin is stretched tight and gleaming, wet as if just born. The black legs contrast sharply against the luminous torso, creating the illusion that the frog has been sculpted from 2 different worlds, one of light, one of shadow. Its movements are slow, deliberate. It hops with precision, pausing often as though listening to something beneath the ground. The soundscape around it is heavy with dripping water and distant thunder. When it calls, the note is short and pulsing, a faint trill that seems to come from the earth itself rather than its throat. That vibration travels through leaves, into air, and finally to us, a small declaration of territory and endurance. Though related to the golden poison dart frog, Philobates bicolor carries less of the deadly batracha toxin. A human might survive its touch, but the risk is never worth the curiosity. The toxin still interferes with nerve signalling, freezing muscles and stopping hearts in small animals within seconds. It is enough to make a predator remember. In the grand design of the rainforest, the goal is not murder, it is deterrence. This frog's poison is its voice, and that voice says, "Leave me be." Scientists studying these frogs in the field often marvel at how nature uses chemistry as punctuation. The brighter the skin, the sharper the sentence. Its habitat is the embodiment of moisture, streams winding through roots, mist rising off ferns, the smell of wet earth so thick it feels edible. There, Philobates bicolor moves through microterritories no bigger than a few square meters, feeding on ants and mites that themselves carry alkaloid precursors to the frog's toxins. It is a circle of life bound by invisible molecules, a delicate recipe perfected over millions of years. Remove one ingredient and the formula collapses. In captivity, deprived of its toxic prey, the black-legged dart frog loses its chemical defense, becoming only a shadow of the glowing sentinel it is in the wild. It is a reminder that danger too depends on context. To the Embera and other local peoples, these frogs are familiar neighbours. They use the golden cousin for hunting poison, but rarely the bicolour. Its milder toxicity and more elusive nature make it less practical as a weapon. Instead, it exists in local myth as a symbol of vigilance, a creature whose colour divides the world into the living and the dying, yet itself walks that line daily. Children are taught early not to touch anything too beautiful. The lesson applies to more than frogs. In that sense, Philobates bicolor is not just a warning species, but a philosophy, a small pulsing idea that survival requires distance from temptation. Under laboratory lights, the frog's skin reveals a micro-universe, glands shimmering with alkaloid crystals, blood vessels branching like coral reefs beneath translucent tissue. Every cell carries a record of evolutionary negotiation, an arms race between predator and prey frozen in molecular detail. Scientists extract these toxins carefully, diluting them to study their structure. What kills in one dose may heal in another. The same chemistry that stops a heart can also dull unbearable pain. Within that paradox lies the strange generosity of poison. The frog does not know this, of course. It only knows that it must glow, must sing, must remain visible in a world where invisibility means death. When the rain thickens and daylight dissolves into silver mist, the frog's golden body becomes a beacon. The forest breathes heavier, the chorus of insects swells, and still this small sentinel sits unmoving on its leaf. Its presence is both fragile and eternal. It asks for nothing but to exist without being touched. A warning not shouted but whispered through colour. The black-legged poison dart frog teaches the same lesson to every creature that crosses its path, that respect is the first law of survival. Thousands of kilometres away, in a land far from the emerald humidity of Colombia, another amphibian tells a darker story. It is larger, rougher, hungrier, a monument not to nature's balance but to human arrogance. The cane toad, Rhinella marina, is the world's most infamous invader, a creature that turned an entire continent into its playground and graveyard. Its tale begins not in Australia, but in the sugarcane plantations of Central and South America. There, farmers battled beetles that devoured their crops. The cane toad, omnivorous and hardy, seemed the perfect solution, a living pesticide wrapped in warty skin. In 1935, Australia imported 102 of them. They were released into the tropical north, expected to march through fields and cleanse them of pests. Instead, they devoured the ecosystem. The cane toad is not beautiful. It does not need to be. Its body is heavy, swollen with muscle and moisture, coloured in shades of dull olive and mud brown, the camouflage of domination rather than subtlety. Its head is wide, its mouth a permanent sneer. Behind its eyes sit two bulging glands, the parotoids, swollen like tumours. Inside them resides bufotoxin, a milky poison so potent it can kill snakes, lizards, dogs, and small mammals with a single bite. When threatened, the toad secretes this fluid through its skin, coating itself in a lethal glaze. For predators unfamiliar with its chemistry, it is a death sentence. A goanna lizard that bites the toad dies within minutes, mouth foaming, heart paralysed. Even crocodiles have been found floating belly up after swallowing one whole. Unlike the dart frogs, which warn with elegance, the cane toad conquers with excess. It breeds without restraint, each female laying up to 30,000 eggs at a time. In the warm wetlands of northern Australia, those eggs hatch into wriggling black tadpoles that poison fish and other amphibians sharing their pools. The invasion spreads like ink across parchment. Towns once filled with native frogs fall silent. Predators vanish. Water systems clog with carcasses. Scientists call it one of the most catastrophic biological introductions in modern history. The irony is cruel. A creature imported to control pests became the pest itself. To watch a cane toad move is to watch defiance made flesh. It walks rather than hops, dragging its bulk across soil with a slow, deliberate arrogance. Its skin is armoured with warts that glisten under flashlight beams, each pore a potential weapon. Its eyes glow coppery red at night, reflecting the artificial lights of towns that now echo with its croaks. Those croaks are not musical. They are industrial, low, rhythmic, mechanical, like an engine idling somewhere in the dark. Entire neighbourhoods hear them on humid nights, an unending reminder of how deeply the toads have rooted themselves into the landscape. In their native range, predators like the Paraguayan snake and certain opossums have evolved resistance to bufotoxin. But in Australia, nature had no time to prepare. The toads marched across the continent faster than adaptation could follow. Within decades, they had travelled thousands of kilometres, leaving silence behind them. Native quolls, monitor lizards, and snakes collapsed in numbers. The ecological web sagged under their weight, and yet, in the stillness of that devastation, the cane toad thrived. Its story became a mirror to our own impatience, our belief that we could import solutions without importing consequences. Up close, the cane toad's skin resembles cracked earth after drought. Rough, uneven, ancient. The ridges along its back trap rainwater, keeping it cool even under burning sun. When it sits still, it looks more like a stone than a living creature. But when it feeds, the illusion breaks. It lunges with startling speed, tongue snapping out to seize anything that moves. Insects, small reptiles, even birds that venture too near. Its appetite is bottomless, its metabolism a slow, relentless fire. In captivity, it can live for 20 years, long enough to outlast most of the damage it causes. Some Australians have turned their invasion into grim folklore. They make wallets and belts from cane toad skin, or film documentaries showing highways littered with flattened bodies after the rainy season. Children are taught to recognise the shape and keep pets away. Conservationists collect them by the sack at night, human silhouettes against floodlight beams, each toad a small echo of a vast mistake. Yet no matter how many are removed, the sound of their croaks always returns with the next storm. They are not a plague in the biblical sense. They are a lesson-wearing warts, a reminder that ecosystems are not laboratories and that arrogance is the most dangerous toxin of all. What connects the cane toad and the black-legged poison dart frog is more than skin or venom. It is the shared language of survival written in different dialects. One evolved poison as a shield, a quiet negotiation with predators that shaped its colours into grace. The other carried its toxin across oceans, turning defence into conquest. Both reveal how fragile the balance between adaptation and destruction can be. When a toxin remains where it belongs, it protects life. When carried too far, it devours it. Imagine the camera fading from the dense emerald humidity of Colombia to the red, cracked soil of northern Australia. The air changes from wet silence to dry heat. In one frame, a small yellow and black frog perches beneath a dripping leaf, heart beating like a metronome. In the next, a bloated toad squats under a streetlight, its throat ballooning with sound. Both are survivors of their own design. Both remind us that poison is neither good nor evil, is purpose, misread or misplaced. When the rain returns to the Amazon, the philibet's bicolour resumes its soft chorus, a voice of warning perfectly tuned to the forest's pulse. When the monsoon hits Queensland, the Rhinella marina emerges from ditches, its croaks rolling like thunder over asphalt. Between them lies the full spectrum of what nature can do and what humans can undo. The frog warns by existing. The toad warns by thriving. Together they tell a single story, that danger is not always the one born in the jungle, but often the one we bring there ourselves. Colour is the rainforest's alphabet. Every hue carries a message, every stripe a warning, every shimmer a decision written in light. Some colours invite, others repel. In the ancient dance of survival, colour is never accidental. It is language shaped by millions of years of danger. The same pattern repeats from continent to continent. Brightness means beware. Dullness means hide, yet within that simple binary lives an endless variety of expression. Two frogs, born on opposite sides of the world, embody these extremes. One glows with defiant brilliance, a beacon against the snow-capped mountains of Australia. The other melts into stone and shadow in the limestone forests of northern Vietnam. Together they tell the story of how survival paints itself, sometimes with light, sometimes with invisibility. The corroboree frog and the Vietnam mossy frog are not rivals, but reflections of each other. One is warning incarnate, the other a living disappearance. High in the Australian Alps, where the air thins and the ground freezes in winter, something improbable survives, a frog whose colours could have been designed by a painter drunk on sunlight. The corroboree frog, belonging to the genus Pseudophryn, is a creature that contradicts its landscape. Amid cold bogs and snow-fed swamps, it glows in black and yellow bands so vivid they seem almost fluorescent. It is tiny, barely 3 centimetres long, but it stands out like a drop of molten gold on coal. Against the pale grasses and melting frost, its skin pulses with energy, each stripe a declaration that even in the harshest climates, life can dare to be seen. The name corroboree comes from an Aboriginal word describing ceremonial gatherings of song and dance. It suits the frog perfectly. When dozens of them call from the mossy ground, their voices merge into a low rhythmic buzz that seems to hum with ritualistic intent. The males call from burrows they dig into sphagnum moss, waiting for the rains to flood their small worlds. Their call is not loud. It is a gentle vibration, more felt than heard, like the sound of distant machinery. The frog's world is a symphony of temperature and timing. Snow melts, water seeps into moss beds, insects wake, and the frogs emerge like sparks from wet earth. Unlike the tropical dart frogs whose toxins come from their diet, the corroboree frog produces its own. It is one of the few amphibians known to synthesize its own alkaloid poison internally, pseudophrenamine, a defensive compound secreted through the skin that deters predators and even fungi. To touch one with bare skin is not fatal, but the tingling irritation it leaves behind is enough to teach caution. The frog's colour pattern acts as a billboard for that message. Black and yellow, the universal combination of danger shared by bees, wasps, and warning signs across the natural world. It is evolution's simplest and most effective design, beauty as deterrence. Its body is compact and muscular, adapted to crawl rather than leap. The fingers end in small discs that grip moss, and its skin feels almost waxy, a protective adaptation against the cold, dry alpine winds. When you look closely, the alternating stripes curve like brushstrokes. No two frogs patterned the same. Beneath those patterns lies a deeper story, one of fragility and endurance. The corroboree frog is endangered, its numbers collapsing under the weight of disease and climate change. A chytrid fungus, invisible to the naked eye, has swept through its mountain refuges, turning the frog's vibrant bodies into still forms buried under ice and mud. Researchers now carry some of them into captive breeding programs, preserving lines of colour in laboratory tanks lit by artificial sun. Each frog in those tanks is a small memory of wilderness, a fragment of rhythm from the ceremony that once echoed through alpine bogs. In the wild, the corroboree frog's breeding cycle is a quiet miracle. The male's burrow becomes both stage and cradle. When a female visits, she deposits eggs in his moss-lined chamber. Then both leave them, trusting that melting snow will flood the chamber at the right time, awakening the embryos months later. The tadpoles swim in frigid, shallow pools that freeze and thaw with the seasons, surviving on patience and inherited resilience. There is poetry in that trust, a species depending not on control but on rhythm. Every generation, the mountain decides who lives, who sings, and who glows again next spring. To watch one of these frogs under sunlight is to feel an almost reverent disbelief. The colours seem impossible in such cold air, as if someone has painted gold onto frost. Yet the frog does not bask for beauty. Its brightness is a wall. To predators the message is clear: I may be small, but I am untouchable. Nature has many ways of saying no, and this is one of its most eloquent. Across the ocean, in a world thick with humidity and shadow, another frog speaks the same language in reverse. Deep in the karst forests of northern Vietnam, where limestone cliffs drip with moss and the air smells of wet stone, lives a creature that seems carved from the forest itself. The Vietnam mossy frog Theloderma corticale is the antithesis of the corroboree frog. Where one demands to be seen, the other is almost impossible to find. To the untrained eye, it is not a frog at all, but a patch of moss clinging to rock, or a lump of lichen glistening with dew. It has mastered invisibility not as absence, but as art. The mossy frog is medium-sized, about 7 centimetres long, its body covered in irregular bumps and ridges. Each wart is tipped in green, black or brown, arranged in no discernible pattern. When the frog sits still on wet stone, its outline disappears. Even under flashlight beams, it blends so perfectly that the eye slides over it. Its camouflage is so effective that researchers often locate it only by sound, a haunting, echoing croak that seems to emerge from the rock itself. In the wild, it is found near mountain streams, perched on the edges of small pools inside caves, or tree holes filled with rainwater. The air there is heavy and still, broken only by the slow dripping of water from stalactites. Touch its skin, and you feel a strange paradox. It is soft, yet armoured by texture. The surface is cold, slightly sticky, the same temperature as the rock it mimics. Its eyes are large and round, with vertical pupils that dilate wide in darkness, reflecting a faint amber light when caught by the camera. They are the only part of the creature that gives away life, the quiet, deliberate movement of awareness behind stillness. When threatened, it folds its limbs close and freezes. Seconds later, the illusion is complete. You are no longer looking at a frog, but at a piece of the forest furniture, ancient and unremarkable. Unlike the corroboree frog, Theloderma corticale carries no bright warning. Its defense is absence. Predators cannot eat what they cannot find, but its relationship with water and humidity is equally intricate. The skin's rough texture allows it to retain droplets for hours, helping the frog breathe through its skin in the wet but oxygen-poor caves it inhabits. When the night falls and mist thickens, it ventures out to hunt small insects. Each jump is silent, the only sound being the soft brush of moss against stone. It returns before dawn, vanishing into its chosen crevice as though it were never there. Its reproductive habits are equally secretive. Females lay clutches of eggs above the surface of small pools glued to the rock walls. When the tadpoles hatch, they drop directly into the water below, where they feed and grow in near-total darkness. Over time, they metamorphose into miniature versions of their parents, already cloaked in mottled greens and browns. In captivity, where their background cannot mimic their native camouflage, they appear almost alien, creatures caught between plant and animal, between life and landscape. The mossy frog's camouflage is not only physical, it is existential. It represents an evolutionary philosophy opposite to that of the corroboree. To survive, it does not proclaim, it withdraws. It erases the boundary between self and world until they are indistinguishable. This is not cowardice, but wisdom, the kind born from millennia of learning when not to move. For the mossy frog, safety lies not in confrontation, but in assimilation. In the dripping silence of Vietnamese caves, that strategy has worked flawlessly for ages. In recent years, however, the world has begun to intrude even into that silence. Habitat loss, deforestation, and the illegal pet trade have placed pressure on populations once thought safe. Collectors prize the frog's strange appearance. Tourists pay to see its uncanny camouflage. Each removal leaves the forest a little emptier, its whispers dimmer. In the humid darkness, every missing croak is a vanishing heartbeat. Conservationists now guard fragments of its range, recording calls that sound more like wind in leaves than voices, hoping that future generations will still hear them. To observe both frogs, the luminous Australian and the shadowed Vietnamese, is to understand two answers to the same question. How do you live in a world that wants to eat you? One chooses confrontation through beauty, the other chooses invisibility through mimicry. The corroboree frog thrives by being unforgettable. The mossy frog thrives by being unseen. Between them lies a spectrum of strategy as elegant as any human invention. Nature does not favour one over the other, it rewards precision. Each frog, in its own way, has found equilibrium within chaos. Imagine the camera moving slowly across two worlds. First, the snow-glazed plateau of Kosciuszko National Park, where tiny black and yellow bodies pulse against white. Then, the dripping limestone of Harlong's inland forests where green shadows breathe. In one scene, light defines survival. In the other, shadow does, yet both are connected by the same heartbeat, the quiet rhythm of amphibian persistence. The frogs call, not to us, but to time itself, asking to be remembered long after their echoes fade. Their lesson, though silent, is universal. Visibility and invisibility are not opposites, they are tools. The corroboree teaches that beauty can be armour, the mossy teaches that stillness can be power. Together they form a duet of caution, the twin colours of endurance painted on opposite sides of the world. In their reflection, we see ourselves, sometimes loud in our defences, sometimes hidden in our fears, always searching for a way to survive the predators we cannot see. When rain falls over the mountains of New South Wales, yellow stripes gleam again under the fog. When mist rises over the karst valleys of Vietnam, stones seem to breathe. Two tiny lives continue their parallel rituals, reminding the earth that colour, whether blazing or muted, is never mere decoration. It is memory. It is survival made visible or invisible. In the soft, eternal twilight of the rainforest, not everything that rules is small. Beneath the dripping canopies and along the edges of blackwater rivers live beings that break the expectation of fragility, so often tied to amphibians. The air here hums with heat and silence, broken only by the occasional plop of something massive entering the water. The swamp is a place of weight, of bodies heavy with moisture, of mud that clings to skin like a second flesh. Here, the frogs are not delicate ornaments of the forest floor, they are titans in miniature ecosystems, old as stone and patient as gravity itself. Two such giants stand apart from all others, the Goliath frog of Cameroon and the African bullfrog of the savannas to the south. One embodies the sheer grandeur of evolution's reach, the other the primal force of appetite and defense. In their size, in their stillness, and in their bursts of ferocity, they show how strength in nature is not always in the roar, but sometimes in the quiet tension before the leap. The Goliath frog, Conroa Goliath, is not simply the largest frog on Earth. It is an echo of a time when life on land was raw, oversized, and untamed. It lives only in a small stretch of equatorial Africa, along the fast-flowing rivers of Cameroon and Equatorial Guinea, where waterfalls cut through emerald ravines and the humidity feels like a physical weight pressing on the lungs. Among the slick boulders and root-tangled banks, this creature reigns in near silence. Adults can reach over 35 centimetres in length, their legs as thick as a man's wrist, their bodies weighing as much as a house cat. When it leaps, the movement seems to defy proportion, muscle and moisture fused into one fluid gesture that can cover nearly 10 feet in a single bound. The splash it makes disappears instantly under the continuous roar of the river, leaving only ripples that fade like whispers. To see a Goliath frog in its native world is to feel the scale of prehistory pressing through the present. Its skin is a map of terrain, rough on the back, smoother along the belly, mottled in greens and browns that mirror the moss and stone around it. The texture catches light like wet bark. Its eyes are immense and golden, their pupils black slits that contract and widen with the pulse of the jungle. When it blinks, a translucent membrane sweeps across the surface like the curtain of a theatre, closing on an ancient performance. The frog breathes with a slow, heavy rhythm, each exhalation misting the air. Everything about it suggests patience, not fragility. It waits, still as a fallen log, until something smaller trembles within reach. The Goliath's world is defined by water in motion. Unlike many amphibians that prefer stagnant pools, Conroa Goliath thrives among currents. Its powerful limbs and webbed feet act as anchors against the torrents, and its weight, up to 3 kilograms, keeps it steady in the flood. It feeds on insects, crustaceans, small fish, and even other frogs, swallowing them whole with the smooth inevitability of a closing door. The sound of its feeding is masked by the river, but if one listens closely enough, there is a faint wet thud each time it moves its jaw, an ancient sound older than language. Scientists have studied the Goliath for decades, yet mysteries remain. Its booming call, once thought to be thunder echoing through valleys, is now rarely heard. Habitat loss, hunting, and the pet trade have silenced many of its rivers. Local communities still regard it with awe, using its presence as a measure of the forest's health. To them, the frog is both spirit and sentinel. Hunters tell stories of seeing the water glow faintly under moonlight when one leaps, a shimmer mistaken for magic, but actually the reflection of its slick, muscular skin. They know not to kill it unless driven by hunger. There is a respect in their restraint, born from knowing that something this old must never be taken lightly. When the breeding season comes, the Goliath frog performs an architectural feat rarely seen among amphibians. The males, driven by ancient instinct, move stones, some weighing several kilograms, to construct small pools along the riverbank. These pools become nurseries for their offspring, protected from the violent currents. Watching this process is like witnessing a primitive engineer at work. Using their massive hind legs, the frogs push and nudge the rocks, their bodies glistening with effort. When the pool is complete, the female deposits hundreds of eggs, and the male stands guard. In the wild cacophony of the rainforest, the scene feels biblical, an animal shaping the earth to shelter life from the chaos of its own element. Despite its size, the Goliath frog is not invincible. Its population declines each year, the victim of overharvesting and shrinking habitats. Captive breeding efforts have met limited success. The frogs seem unable to reproduce easily outside their native rivers. Their survival depends on the rhythm of rain and the purity of flowing water. Pollution and deforestation break that rhythm. The world they require is narrow and precise, balanced on the edge of extinction. When one disappears, an entire sound vanishes from the forest's orchestra, a bass note lost forever. To stand near a river once filled with their booming calls and hear only the hiss of water is to feel the absence of something ancient, as though the land itself has grown smaller. If the Goliath frog is a monument to strength born of patience, the African bullfrog, Pyxicephalus adspersus, is strength born of hunger and rage. Found across sub-Saharan Africa, from the savannas of Namibia to the wetlands of South Africa, it is a creature that looks carved from baked earth and stormlight. Its body is round and squat, its mouth enormous, nearly half the length of its head. When it opens that mouth, it reveals not a gentle insect catcher, but a trap designed for violence. Teeth-like projections called odontoids line its lower jaw, giving its bite a ferocity unexpected from an amphibian. Males can grow to the size of a small melon and weigh over 2 kilograms. Their skin, coloured in dull greens and yellows, looks armoured, each fold thick with keratin that helps resist dehydration and injury. To pick one up is to feel the solidity of something prehistoric, like holding a piece of damp muscle cut from the earth itself. The African bullfrog's personality matches its form. It is territorial, aggressive, and perpetually ready to defend. In the rainy season, when ephemeral pools form across the plains, males claim small territories within them. Their calls are deep, resonant bellows, bass notes that shake the water's surface and echo across the night. These calls attract females and warn other males to stay clear. When rival males meet, they do not sing. They fight. Their clashes are sudden and brutal, mouths locked, bodies heaving, legs thrashing. The sound is a mixture of croaks, splashes, and the tearing of water. Eventually one retreats, leaving the victor to claim his muddy throne. Once mating ends, the male's role shifts from warrior to guardian. When the eggs hatch into tadpoles, he stays near the pool, watching. It is a patience charged with violence. He will attack anything, fish, insects, even birds that approaches. If the pool begins to dry, he digs channels through the mud with his strong hind legs, creating escape routes to deeper water. Observers have described him carrying tadpoles in his mouth, transporting them one by one to safety. It is an image that feels almost human in its care, almost monstrous in its determination. Protection and destruction coexist within the same body. When the dry season returns, the African bullfrog performs another miracle of endurance. It burrows deep into the earth, sometimes a metre below the surface, encasing itself in a cocoon made from layers of shed skin. Inside that self-made shell, it slows its heartbeat to a crawl and waits. Months, even years can pass before rain awakens it again. Then, as thunder rolls and the scent of wet dust rises, the cocoon softens, splits, and a giant emerges, blinking, breathing, and ravenous. It devours the first thing that moves. Life for the bullfrog begins anew, not with gentleness, but with hunger. Its diet has no sentiment. Birds, snakes, small mammals, and even other frogs, all are fair game. Once it bites, it does not let go. The grip of its jaws is astonishing. Zookeepers handling them wear gloves thick enough to stop minor cuts. When a bullfrog feeds, it looks almost mechanical, its throat bulging, its eyes half closed in concentration. There is no waste, no hesitation. It swallows life whole and digests the lesson later. In that appetite lies an ancient logic, the will to survive in a landscape where mercy is a luxury. Despite its ferocity, Pixiscephalus adspersus is not a villain. In its ecosystem, it plays the role of regulator, keeping insect and rodent populations balanced. Its presence signals healthy seasonal wetlands, those fragile places that exist for only a few weeks each year before vanishing into dust. Farmers sometimes tolerate them, knowing their croaks mean rain has truly come. The frog's body, thick with stored water, is a living reservoir in a world of scarcity. Up close, the African bullfrog's eyes are mesmerizing, amber with a slit pupil glinting like old glass. They move little, yet seem to register everything. The shadow of a bird, the tremor of a leaf, the flash of something edible. When threatened, the frog inflates its body, lowers its head, and emits a loud hiss, a sound that feels out of place in a frog, more reptilian than amphibian. If that fails, it lunges forward, mouth open, a living contradiction of its name. There is nothing bovine about this bullfrog except its bellow. In the mythology of African villages, it is sometimes seen as a rainbringer, a totem of abundance. Children are warned not to harm it, lest the skies stay dry. Its cycles mirror the seasons: disappearance, rebirth, consumption, protection. It is a creature built entirely around necessity, sculpted by a continent where water itself dictates life and death. Watching it move across mud under lightning feels like watching the earth remember its own pulse. The Goliath frog and the African bullfrog stand on opposite ends of the amphibian temperament, one silent and monumental, the other loud and defiant, but both speak of endurance in its rawest form. They are proof that size in nature is not excess, it is adaptation. The Goliath built its enormity to anchor itself in rivers too strong for frail creatures. The bullfrog built its mass to endure droughts and predators alike. In them, the body becomes both weapon and prayer. Imagine the lens moving from the roaring waterfalls of Cameroon to the cracked plains of Botswana. The camera slows, tracking two silhouettes, one crouched on stone, glistening under moonlight, the other half buried in red mud, eyes just above the surface. The rain falls differently in each place, but both giants breathe to its rhythm. Their calls, one deep and distant, one raw and guttural, overlap like verses of an ancient hymn. They are reminders that life's oldest shapes still hold power, and that the pulse of the earth can still be heard through the throats of frogs. They are not monsters, they are memories of when the world was wetter, wilder, and closer to the beginning. And even now, when we think we've measured every mountain and named every stream, the echo of their voices reminds us the swamp still keeps its secrets. In the darkness of the wetlands, where air and water melt into one breath, hunger has its own music. The night hums with life, but not all of it gentle. Beneath the chorus of insects and the drone of frogs lies another rhythm, slow, wet, deliberate. It is the sound of mouths opening, waiting, swallowing. The amphibian world is not all small hearts and delicate skin. It is also an empire of predators whose faces are built entirely around hunger. For some, the mouth is a tool. For others, it is identity itself, a gate between life and death, shaped by millions of years of feeding in silence. Two species capture that idea in its purest, strangest form, the Budget's frog and the Packman frog. They look like caricatures of appetite, wide, flattened, almost comical, but their design is perfect. They are the mouths of the night, breathing, watching, and biting at the rhythm of rain. In the swamps of Paraguay and Argentina, hidden among reed beds and stagnant pools, lives a creature that seems sculpted out of mud and anger. The Budget's frog, Lepidobatrachus laevis, is known locally as the frog from hell, a name earned not through legend but through behaviour. When threatened, it inflates its body, opens its enormous mouth, and emits a screech that sounds disturbingly like metal dragging across stone. The noise cuts through the humid air, a rasp that startles birds, freezes small animals, and makes even seasoned herpetologists flinch. To encounter one in the beam of a flashlight is to confront a shape that shouldn't exist. A flattened circular body, eyes protruding like whetstones, and a mouth so wide it seems to consume half its face. The head is not separate from the body, it is the body. The coloration of the budget's frog is a map of the swamp itself, mottled olive, brown, and grey, with irregular patches that mimic the wet silt and algae where it hides. It spends much of its life buried beneath the surface, only its eyes and nostrils breaking through the water film, waiting for anything careless enough to move. When prey approaches, an insect, a small fish, even another frog, the ambush is instantaneous. The jaws snap shut with a clap, the body folds forward, and the victim disappears. There is no chewing, no ceremony, only a gulp and stillness. Inside that mouth are curved, tooth-like projections, odontoid ridges capable of piercing flesh. Once caught, escape is impossible. The budget's frog holds on with a stubbornness that seems personal. Its aggression is legendary even among its own kind. Males will attack each other during breeding season, locking jaws in what looks like a grotesque parody of a kiss. In captivity, they must be housed separately, or they will bite through one another's limbs. Yet this violence has purpose. In the wild, survival depends on asserting dominance over limited waterholes. When the dry season begins, the ponds shrink, food disappears, and the frog's temperament shifts from territorial to desperate. It digs into the mud, shedding layers of skin that harden into a cocoon. There, entombed in its own body, it waits for rain. Months later, the first drops soften the shell and the frog crawls out, revived, ravenous, ready to feed again. It is not rebirth in the spiritual sense, it is simply hunger, resuming its work. Its call, when not enraged, is surprisingly gentle, a deep short croak that bubbles through the mud like trapped air. To locals it signals rain, much as the African bullfrog's call does on the other side of the continent. But when cornered or handled, the tone turns to that metallic scream again, primal, defensive, and chillingly human in timbre. Scientists studying the species often describe it as a voice from the Pleistocene, a relic sound from when the Earth's lungs were wetter and the nights were ruled by creatures that measured their worth by their bite. In anatomical terms, the budget's frog is a masterpiece of compression. Its skeleton has evolved to flatten the skull and expand the jaw hinge, creating a gape proportionally wider than that of any other frog. Its limbs are short but muscular, ideal for lunging rather than leaping. The belly, pale and soft, hides an engine of appetite that seems impossible for such a small frame. Everything about its body speaks of ambush, of efficiency, of a life stripped to its essential gesture, the strike. Its reputation among local fishermen oscillates between fear and fascination. Children are told stories of the devil frog that screams under the moon. Adults know it as a sign of fertile wetlands, a strange, ugly protector of the swamp. For all its ferocity, it is not a killer of men, only a defender of its muddy empire. Yet standing knee-deep in dark water and hearing that rasping cry echo between reeds, one might be forgiven for feeling that something older than humanity still rules these places, something with a mouth too wide and a patience too perfect. Thousands of miles away, in the dense rainforests of South America, another predator of silence lies buried beneath leaves, its head blending with the earth like a forgotten relic. The Pac-Man frog, Ceratophrys ornata, takes its name from the arcade character not by coincidence, but by design. It is almost spherical, with a mouth that occupies nearly 2/3 of its body. From above, it looks like a disk of soil and moss, motionless, benign. Then, in less than a heartbeat, it becomes a living trap. The jaws open in a crescent of pink and yellow flesh, the tongue flashes forward, and the world narrows to the sound of swallowing. The Pac-Man frog inhabits the grasslands and subtropical forests of Argentina, Uruguay, and Brazil. Its colours vary, greens, yellows, and browns, mottled in patterns that resemble sun-dappled leaves. Unlike most frogs, it is not built for travel. Its legs are short, its movement clumsy, but it doesn't need to move. It is a master of stillness. It waits, half buried with only its eyes exposed. The patience is infinite. When a beetle, mouse, or small lizard wanders close, the frog erupts in motion so sudden that even slow-motion cameras struggle to capture the strike. Prey larger than itself is no exception. The Pac-Man frog will bite, hold, and slowly force the struggling victim into its mouth, using its forelimbs to cram food down its throat. The process can take minutes, but it never relinquishes its grip. The anatomy of this species is a marvel of single-purpose engineering. The jaw muscles are immensely strong for its size. Its skull is reinforced like a helmet, allowing it to absorb the impact of violent lunges. Inside the mouth, rows of keratinized teeth line the upper jaw, designed not to cut, but to anchor. The frog bites, waits for resistance to fade, then swallows whole. Biologists have measured bite forces exceeding 500 newtons, comparable to that of a small dog. It is by any measure a predator out of proportion with its shape. Despite this brutality, there is something strangely endearing about the Pac-Man frog. Its round, flattened body gives it an almost toy-like appearance. Pet owners around the world keep them in terrariums, marvelling at their bizarre immobility. But few realise the creature's true temperament. It is quick to bite, even at fingers offering food. When disturbed, it inflates itself and croaks with a guttural hiss, as though warning that what looks like a cartoon is in fact a small embodiment of prehistoric will. Its appetite is relentless. In captivity, overfeeding is a danger. It will continue eating long past fullness, sometimes choking to death on its own prey. To watch it feed is to witness instinct unsoftened by reason, the raw pulse of survival translated into motion. In the wild, Ceratophrys ornata plays an important ecological role, controlling populations of insects and small vertebrates. Yet its own population is threatened by habitat loss and pollution. The wetlands of South America shrink each year under agriculture and drainage projects, and the frog's dependence on specific humidity levels makes it highly vulnerable. Still, it endures, its design too perfect to fade quickly. Its eggs hatch into voracious tadpoles known to cannibalize each other within days, a brutal introduction to the world that mirrors their adult lives. The species seems to have accepted violence as its inheritance, and through it, survival. The Pac-Man frog's eyes are among the most expressive in the amphibian world. Forward-facing, unblinking, ringed with gold or bronze. They give the illusion of intelligence, but what they truly hold is patience. In the dim undergrowth, those eyes remain motionless for hours, reflecting the shimmer of passing insects. Then, without warning, the stillness breaks. A blur, a soundless impact, and stillness again. The forest closes over the event as if nothing had happened. Life, in its smallest forms, disappears without trace into that mouth of soft doom. What unites the Budget's frog and the Pac-Man frog is not lineage, but philosophy. Both have reduced the act of living to its simplest rhythm: wait, bite, swallow, survive. Their existence strips away the illusion of gentleness that humans often project onto frogs. These are not delicate singers perched on lilies. They are hunters sculpted by scarcity and the endless hunger of mud. Their mouths are more than organs. They are metaphors for the swamp itself, consuming and renewing, taking life only to give it back as silence. In their world, morality has no meaning. The frog that devours its kin is not cruel. It is efficient. The one that bites the hand feeding it is not ungrateful. It is consistent. To study them is to glimpse a truth older than empathy, that the mouth, in nature, is both creator and destroyer. It shapes what lives and what is remembered. Long after the rains end, when the ponds dry and the calls fade, the impression of those wide mouths lingers in the mind, like black holes of appetite scattered through the soft dark of the earth. If the Goliath frog and the bullfrog embody physical strength, these two embody the strength of simplicity. They do not build nests or guard offspring. They do not migrate or call for mates in choirs. They sit, they wait, they eat, and the world turns around their stillness. Yet in that stillness there is a kind of perfection. Their bodies are tuned to their environment with a precision evolution rarely achieves without cruelty. Each muscle, each tooth ridge, each colour blotch exist for one purpose: to bring the next breath, the next meal, the next night. When we look at them through glass or under torchlight, we're seeing ourselves in miniature. Creatures that once needed to be clever, now too clever to admit their own hunger. The frogs have no such illusions. They know that to live is to eat and be eaten, to open and close, to endure. In the dim mirror of their gaze, we're reminded that even in the silence of the swamp, survival has a sound. the wet clap of a mouth closing on its chance. And so, when the night deepens and the last raindrops slide from reed to river, the voices of the small singers fade. But somewhere, unseen, the true rulers of the mud remain awake, motionless discs of muscle and instinct, breathing softly through their mouths. The budget's frog sleeps in its cocoon of patience. The packman frog dreams in its leaf-covered ambush. Between them lies a truth whispered by every swamp since time began, that hunger, not fear, is the heartbeat of the dark. In the endless damp of the tropics, survival is an art form. Every creature here wears a disguise or a weapon, sometimes both at once. Nature is not content with symmetry. It bends bone, twists skin, and remakes its children according to need. In the world of frogs, this creative violence has produced some of the strangest forms on Earth. Some hide behind leaves, others brandish their bodies like armour, but two stand apart, creatures so singular they seem like myths that somehow escaped into reality. The Amazon horned frog, a predator sculpted from fallen leaves and hunger, and the hairy frog, a being so fierce it turns its own skeleton into knives. Between them lies a story of metamorphosis not as beauty but as strategy, of bodies that rewrite their own limits to survive. These are frogs built from horns, bones, and blood, evolution's experiments made flesh. Deep in the flooded forests of the Amazon basin, beneath the green light filtered through countless layers of canopy, the Amazon horned frog, Ceratophorus cornuta, waits. It does not move. It does not need to. Everything it requires eventually comes close enough. Its shape is the first deception. A low, circular mound of soil and leaf litter, edges blurred by jagged protrusions that rise above its eyes like the torn ends of dry leaves. These horns are not bone but extended pieces of skin, yet they transform the frog into part of the forest floor. To an untrained eye, it disappears. To an insect or small lizard, it is just another patch of earth, until that patch comes alive. When the strike happens, it is almost invisible. The frog's body lunges forward with startling precision, its mouth opening wide enough to engulf prey nearly half its size. The jaws snap shut with an audible clap, and within seconds the forest floor looks the same again. Only the faint vibration of a dying creature under the leaves betrays what occurred. The Amazon horned frog is a perfect ambush predator, all mouth, all patience. Its massive head and short limbs give it the appearance of something unfinished, as if evolution ran out of material halfway through and decided the mouth would suffice. And in truth it does. The colour of this frog is the language of camouflage. Greens and browns fade into each other in irregular blotches, while the underside remains pale and slick. The skin is rough, like the surface of bark capable of holding small particles of soil that add to the illusion of decay. Its eyes, set high on the head, gleam with a steady golden light, always half closed, as though observing the world through the patience of a predator who knows time is on its side. The body is heavy but pliant. Its movements, when they come, are sudden and absolute. In the ecosystem of the Amazon, it is a quiet contradiction, slow in every respect except the moment that matters. The horns for which it is named serve no direct defensive purpose. They are extensions of disguise, yet they lend the frog an uncanny majesty, giving its face a mythical silhouette reminiscent of a dragon or demon from pre-Columbian carvings. Local tribes once regarded them as spirits of the underworld, guardians of decay and rebirth. They believed that to harm one was to invite misfortune, for these frogs dwelling between water and soil represented the threshold between life and death. Scientists see no supernatural force, only adaptation. Yet in that adaptation lies a kind of spiritual symmetry. Everything about the horned frog speaks of thresholds, between motion and stillness, visibility and invisibility, predator and prey. Its diet is as extraordinary as its patience. Anything that fits in its mouth is considered food. Insects, small mammals, birds, other frogs, even snakes. The species' powerful jaws are supported by a reinforced skull and interlocking muscles capable of generating a bite force that, for its size, rivals small reptiles. When prey resists, the frog's throat swells, its forelimbs press inward, and the body contracts in a rhythmic squeeze until the struggling stops. Then silence returns. In this way, it functions less like an animal and more like a living trap. one that has perfected the art of disappearance and sudden reappearance. During the wet season, when the forest becomes an ocean of mud and the rivers overflow, the Amazon horned frog begins its reproductive ritual. Males call from temporary pools, a deep, resonant grunt that echoes through the low mist like a distant drum. The females, drawn by this subterranean pulse, lay hundreds of eggs attached to submerged vegetation. Within days, the tadpoles hatch, already displaying predatory instincts. They feed on insects and smaller larvae, and in the absence of other food, on each other. Cannibalism here is not cruelty, it is preparation. Those who survive grow into the same still, patient monsters that ruled the mud before them. The forest, eternal and indifferent, makes no moral judgment. For centuries, the horned frog has fascinated naturalists and artists alike. In indigenous art, its form often appears beside symbols of death and fertility, the dual powers of the jungle. In modern times, it lives on as both pet and legend, its grotesque beauty captivating those who see in it a trace of the primeval. Yet, captivity dulls its myth. Behind glass, it loses the silence of the forest that makes its menace sacred. A horned frog in a terrarium may still feed with ferocity, but the echo of rain and the smell of rotting leaves are gone, and with them the poetry of its hunger. Across the Atlantic, far from the humid jungles of South America, another amphibian wields a weapon even stranger, a creature that arms itself not with horns or teeth, but with its own bones, in the rainforests of Central Africa, where the ground glows with the reflection of lightning and the night smell of iron and earth. The hairy frog, Trichobotrachus robustus, prowls the riverbanks. At first glance it looks ordinary, if a little rough. A medium-sized frog, mottled brown, body muscular. But under that skin lies a secret that makes it one of the strangest vertebrates alive. When threatened, it breaks its own bones. The mechanism is both horrifying and ingenious. Along the frog's fingers lie thin, bony rods, fragments of skeletal structure coated in collagen. When danger approaches, perhaps a snake, a bird, or the careless hand of a collector, the frog contracts special muscles that snap these bones at their joints. The sharpened fragments pierce through the skin, emerging as makeshift claws. They are not permanent, they can retract once the skin heals, but in that moment, they transform the hairy frog into a weaponized bundle of fury. Scientists who first observed this behavior described it as Wolverine-like, but the truth is more primal. The frog bleeds to defend itself, turning pain into armor. The name hairy frog comes not from these claws, but from the strange filamentous structures that appear on the males during breeding season. Along their flanks and thighs grow fine, hair-like projections, extensions of skin filled with blood vessels. These structures increase the frog's surface area for oxygen absorption, allowing the males to stay submerged for long periods while guarding their eggs. Seen underwater, under the flicker of moonlight, these filaments sway like strands of fur, giving the impression of a mammal trapped in amphibian form. Combined with the claws, the sight is both surreal and unsettling, a body that seems to blur the line between creature and myth. Its habitat stretches across Cameroon, the Republic of Congo, and Gabon, favouring fast-flowing streams lined with dense vegetation. It hunts at night, feeding on insects, small crustaceans and sometimes other frogs. Its movements are slow, deliberate, almost reptilian. When disturbed, it raises its body slightly, revealing the muscular chest and legs that power both its leaps and its violence. To hold one is to feel the density of living tension, the quiet weight of a being built for sudden bursts of resistance. The hairy frog's skeleton tells the story of its violence. Unlike most frogs, its bones are unusually dense with reinforced finger joints that make self-fracturing possible. Evolution, in this species, has accepted the cost of self-harm as the price of survival. Each act of defense leaves scars, yet the frog continues, a small paradox of endurance where pain becomes an instinct. When the claws pierce its skin, tiny beads of blood spread across its limbs, glistening under the torchlight like jewels. The sight is grotesque and beautiful, a tableau of life's refusal to yield. In the silent dark of the African forest, it looks like a ritual, as if the earth itself were bleeding through one of its oldest children. Locals know the hairy frog by other names: the horror frog, the spider frog, even the demon frog, yet their folklore does not fear it. Instead, it carries a reputation for strength. Some tribes once believed the bones of this frog, when ground into powder, could grant endurance to hunters. Others considered its sudden appearance after storms a sign that the spirits of the dead were walking through the rain. In these stories, the frog's ability to draw its own blood was seen not as curse but as connection, proof that life and death are one fluid motion, separated only by a heartbeat and a scar. For scientists, the hairy frog is a marvel of evolutionary creativity, an amphibian that rewrote the limits of its own anatomy. In laboratories, X-rays reveal the strange retraction process of its claws. After a fight, as the frog relaxes, the bones slide back beneath the skin, the wounds close, and within days the body is whole again. It is regeneration through violence, the body rebuilding itself as it bleeds. Few creatures embody the paradox of life so vividly, that to stay alive sometimes requires breaking oneself apart. When night falls on the rivers of Cameroon, the hairy frog's call echoes faintly through the humidity, a low rasping note that carries no melody, only intent. The air smells of wet stone and iron, the same metallic scent as blood. The frog crouches on a rock, muscles tense, filaments swaying in the current. Around it, insects hum like static, lightning flickers across the water, and the world seems suspended between calm and catastrophe. In that charged silence, the frog waits, not as prey, not quite as predator, but as something else entirely, a reminder of how far evolution will go to preserve the pulse of life. Together, the Amazon horned frog and the hairy frog form a strange mirror. One kills by patience, the other defends by pain. Both turn the body itself into weapon. Both erase the boundary between violence and necessity. The horned frog hides its hunger beneath stillness. The hairy frog hides its fear beneath blood. In their separate corners of the world, they live out the same unspoken truth, that beauty and brutality are not opposites, but reflections of the same survival instinct. Imagine the camera drifting from the emerald floodplains of the Amazon to the storm-swept rivers of Central Africa. One frog lies buried beneath leaves, its horned head blending with decay. The other clings to stone, its body trembling with muscle and filament. Between them stretch continents, but they are united by a single rhythm, the rhythm of transformation. They remind us that nature's artistry is not gentle, it is ruthless, experimental, unending. To survive is to change, even when that change demands pain. In the final shot, rain falls over both forests. The water slides over leaf and bone, over skin and claw. Somewhere beneath that rain, two hearts beat, one slow, one furious, yet both keeping time with the same eternal pulse. In that rhythm lies the essence of life itself, the will to endure, whatever the shape, whatever the cost. In the quiet places of the tropics, where the air itself seems to breathe, life has invented strange ways to endure. Birth, in these worlds, is not gentle. It happens in mud, underwater, in the mouths and on the backs of creatures whose tenderness looks almost like horror. Among amphibians, motherhood and fatherhood take forms so alien that they feel more myth than science. Bodies that split, skin that swells, throats that cradle unborn life. To survive, some frogs have turned their own flesh into nurseries. To protect, they have turned breathing into a ritual of patience and pain. Two such species stand like bookends on this spectrum of sacrifice. The Suriname toad, a creature whose back becomes a living womb, and Darwin's frog, whose males carry their offspring inside their own throats until the moment of birth. Between them lies the most intimate metamorphosis in nature, a story not of love as humans know it, but of devotion written in skin and silence. In the still, black waters of South America's slow-moving streams, the Suriname toad, Peepa Peepa, moves like a shadow that forgot to rise. Its body is flat, triangular, and almost formless, a living relic of the time when fish first learned to crawl. The skin, mottled grey and brown, blends perfectly with the muddy bottom, its texture resembling decaying leaves. To see one in the wild is to mistake it for debris until it moves. Then, with a ripple and a soft flexing of limbs, the illusion collapses. Its limbs are thin and webbed, ending in star-shaped fingers used not for walking, but for sensing. The head is wide, the eyes small and lidless, staring upward from the surface like two dull coins. There is no tongue, no teeth, no elegance, only efficiency. Everything about Pipa Pipa feels primitive, as though evolution made it once and then walked away. But its simplicity hides a miracle. When the rains begin and the river swells, the Suriname toad begins its breeding ritual, a slow, weightless dance that takes place entirely underwater. The male clasps the female from behind in a position called amplexus, and together they tumble and spin through the murky current, turning again and again in a slow-motion ballet. With each rotation, the female releases a few eggs, and the male fertilizes them as they drift upward through the water. Then, using her hind legs, the female sweeps the eggs back toward her own body, pressing them gently into the skin of her back. Over hours, this ritual repeats until dozens of eggs are embedded in her flesh, each enclosed by a thin membrane. The skin swells, sealing the eggs beneath it, and the mother becomes something else entirely, a landscape of life. For weeks she carries them this way. The skin of her back turns into a living honeycomb, each cell containing a developing embryo. From above, it looks alien, almost grotesque. 100 small domes rising and falling with her breath. Beneath the surface of the water, the light filters down in fractured rays, glinting across her rough skin. Small fish pass above, unaware that beneath them a creature is gestating an entire generation beneath her flesh. Inside each pocket, a tadpole grows, feeding on its yolk, forming tiny limbs, eyes, and hearts. There are no external eggs to guard, no predators to fend off. The mother herself is the nest. When the young are ready, the skin opens, not in one place, but everywhere. One by one, fully formed froglets push through the thin membrane, emerging like tiny spirits from a field of pores. Each burst of movement is delicate and deliberate, a small explosion of life breaking through the boundary of another. The mother remains still, her eyes half closed, her body quivering slightly as her children leave. It is a scene both haunting and sacred, birth without blood but not without pain. Within hours, the young disperse into the water, their mother's back smooth again, the empty craters slowly healing. In time, the skin regrows, unmarked, as if the miracle had never happened. Observers often describe this spectacle as unsettling, even disturbing, but that's only because human eyes are unaccustomed to such intimacy between body and birth. For the Suriname toad, it is the most natural thing in the world, a gesture of total trust in the body's ability to protect. There are no nests, no burrows, no songs, only skin and water, womb and current. In a world where everything eats everything else, this design is genius. By hiding life within itself, the frog defeats the chaos around it. Its habits outside reproduction are quiet. Pipa Pipa spends most of its life lying motionless on the riverbed, occasionally rising to gulp air. Its call is not a croak, but a series of clicks produced underwater, sharp metallic notes used for communication. In captivity, they sound almost like sonar. To hear it in the wild, deep in the flooded forest, is to listen to the voice of a ghost, a creature that has long ceased to care about the attention of the living. It has turned its body into a cradle, and its existence into a cycle of waiting, birthing, vanishing. In it, evolution's creativity finds both its strangest and most tender expression. Thousands of kilometers south, across mountains and deserts, in the cool, temperate forests of Chile and Argentina, another amphibian performs a similar miracle with an entirely different body. The Darwin's frog, Rhinoderma darwini, named after Charles Darwin, who first described it in 1834, is small, barely the size of a thumb, yet within its chest beats one of nature's most extraordinary hearts. Where Pipa Pipa uses her back, Darwin's frog entrusts his throat. Here, motherhood belongs to the father. The frog's appearance is deceptive. Its body is slender, coloured in shades of brown and green that blend with moss and leaf litter. Its snout extends into a sharp point, giving it the silhouette of a withered leaf. When it sits still, it vanishes completely into the forest floor. The air around it is cool and damp, filled with the smell of wet bark and ferns. Streams trickle through the undergrowth, and in their shallow pools the frogs begin their seasonal chorus, soft bell-like calls that resonate through the mist. When the female lays her eggs, she deposits them not in water, but on moist ground near the stream's edge. The male then guards them, keeping vigil over the translucent pearls until they begin to tremble with life. At this moment, a transformation occurs that seems almost beyond belief. The male lowers his mouth to the clutch and draws the eggs into his throat, one by one, swallowing them not as food but as promise. Inside his body, the eggs slide into a specialized chamber, the vocal sac, the same organ used for calling. For the next several weeks, this sac becomes a womb. Within it, the eggs develop into tadpoles and then into fully formed froglets. The male neither eats nor calls during this time. His entire being is devoted to carrying life. His throat swells and pulses as the young grow, each movement visible beneath the thin skin. His heartbeats quicken, his breathing becomes shallow. In the silence of the forest, his body vibrates softly, the hum of 50 tiny hearts inside one. When the time comes, he opens his mouth and releases them, one by one, into the moss or the shallow water. They emerge fully formed, miniature reflections of their parents, each only a few millimeters long. The father's body relaxes, his throat returning to normal, his duty complete. It is a birth without blood, yet not without burden. The male Darwin's frog endures weeks of starvation and vulnerability, unable to call or defend himself while carrying his brood. Yet he does it without hesitation. The instinct is absolute, coded deep into his being. It is as though the forest itself entrusted him with the task of proving that fatherhood too can be an act of sacrifice. In this quiet exchange between body and offspring, nature blurs the line between male and female, giver and protector. Darwin himself, who collected the first specimen during his voyage on the Beagle, wrote with awe about the frog's strange appearance. But he could not have known the depths of its behaviour. Only later did scientists discover the secret of its throat. To this day, few other creatures share such a strategy. The species' close relative, Rhinoderma rufum, is now possibly extinct, lost to habitat destruction and fungal disease. Rhinoderma darwinii itself teeters on the edge, surviving only in isolated pockets of pristine forest. Its voice, once common in the southern Andes, has grown faint, a rare note in the fragile symphony of temperate rainforests. To see one is to glimpse the fragility of invention. The male sits on a damp log, his body glistening under filtered light. His throat, still swollen from carrying his young, moves in small, tired motions. Around him, the forest breathes, dripping water, shifting ferns, the faint sound of wind on bark. There is no celebration in his posture, only quiet endurance. Parenthood, in this form, is not joy but obligation, not warmth but persistence. It is the simple, relentless continuation of life through bodies willing to be altered by it. Both the Suriname toad and Darwin's frog represent the farthest reaches of what the amphibian body can become, one turning its skin into a womb, the other transforming voice into cradle. They are two variations on the same ancient theme, that life, in its most honest form, demands surrender. These frogs do not care for beauty or comfort. Their reproduction is not spectacle, but necessity carried to the point of transcendence. In them we see the body used as vessel, as offering, as bridge between the living and the unborn. Imagine the camera descending through the murky rivers of Suriname, the dim light catching the ripples on a mother's back as tiny frogs emerge like stars from a grey sky. Then, a shift. The cool green light of Chile, where a small male sits beneath a fern, his throat trembling with hidden life. Two scenes, two worlds, bound by a single pulse, the devotion that turns flesh into refuge. The forest does not judge the method. It only listens to the rhythm, the slow, wet sound of creation repeating itself across continents and centuries. A skin that opens, a throat that releases. Mothers and fathers dissolving into the continuity of their children. When the rain returns and the streams overflow, their voices rise again, clicks in the dark water, whispers in the moss. And though we may find their methods strange, even unsettling, there is something profoundly human in their persistence. To carry life inside oneself, to protect it at any cost, to let it go when the time comes, this is not the invention of our species. It is a song older than memory, sung first by creatures who breathed through their skin and called through the rain. In nature, visibility is both weapon and weakness. Some creatures survive by shouting their presence in colour and sound. Others live by erasing themselves entirely, but a few exist in a state between, neither visible nor invisible, but revealed only in glimpses, as if reality itself hesitates to define them. These are the beings that play with light, bending it through their skin or bending our eyes through deception. They do not hide, they transform. Among them, 2 frogs stand as masters of illusion. One is made of glass, its body so clear that its beating heart is visible through the belly. The other is shaped like decay itself, a perfect imitation of the forest's litter, sharp-nosed and motionless, waiting for movement. The glass frog and the Malayan horned frog are the twin faces of invisibility, one transparent, the other disguised, both thriving in the art of being overlooked. At night in the lowland rainforests of Central and South America, when the canopy glows faintly under the moon and the air hums with insects, the glass frog, Hyalinobatrachium fleischmanni, emerges. It is small, delicate, and easy to miss, a flicker of green translucence no larger than a human thumb. It lives high among the leaves that hang over streams, a world suspended between earth and air. Its skin, on the back, is a soft lime green that glows faintly under moonlight, but turn it over, and the illusion dissolves. The underside is clear, as if carved from crystal. Through the thin membrane of the belly one can see the rhythm of its heart, the curve of the intestines, the pulse of blood like liquid light. It is the only creature that seems to carry transparency as identity. When still, the glass frog looks like a reflection more than a body, a ghost of colour on a sheet of leaf. Its bones shimmer pale blue beneath the skin, and droplets of dew rest on its surface without sinking in. The transparency is not uniform. Under certain angles the edges blur into the background, while the central body glows faintly with an emerald hue. Scientists once thought this clarity was mere accident, a quirk of evolution, but recent studies suggest something far more deliberate. The translucence bends the frog's shadow, softening its outline against the leaves and confusing predators that hunt by shape. Even under moonlight, the frog is less object than echo, less form than memory. During the day, it hides beneath leaves where light filters through in soft gradients of green. Its eyes match that colour almost perfectly, round, with golden irises patterned like tree rings. When the frog sleeps, it tucks its limbs close to its body and presses flat against the leaf's underside. The result is invisibility through stillness. No camouflage, no burrow, no horn, just transparency and trust in light. The glass frog's life revolves around water and patience. Males stake territories along stream edges, calling with soft, high-pitched trills that blend with the insect chorus. Their call is delicate, more vibration than sound, as if the forest itself were breathing through them. When a female approaches, the mating ritual is swift. She deposits eggs on the underside of leaves that hang above running water. There, the male guards them, often for weeks, fending off ants and the other predators. When the eggs hatch, the tadpoles drop directly into the stream below, tiny splashes in the night, the beginning of another transparent generation. The parental devotion of the glass frog, though silent, is fierce. In some species, males have been seen attacking wasps and spiders many times their size to protect their clutch. Their small translucent bodies flash like droplets of living glass under moonlight as they lunge at intruders. For a creature that looks like fragility itself, there is astonishing courage in that gesture, a defiance written in translucence. Up close, under torchlight, the glass frog becomes otherworldly. The heart beats visibly, slow and deliberate like a lantern pulsing in fog. Blood vessels trace faint red lines beneath the ribs, and each breath turns the abdomen into a faint mirror of the surrounding light. To see it is to confront the intimacy of life itself, the machinery of existence laid bare. There is no mystery, yet no explanation satisfies. Why expose one's organs to the world? Why turn the self into a window? Perhaps because, in a place where every colour is a warning, transparency is the purest disguise. Locals sometimes call these frogs the souls of rain, believing that when a person dies in the forest, their spirit lingers as a clear amphibian by the riverbank, forever watching the current. The superstition feels fitting. The glass frog is neither ghost nor flesh. It is both. When it leaps from a leaf, it does not fall so much as vanish. A brief shimmer in the humid air, the world swallows it whole, and nothing remains but the soft rustle of leaves returning to stillness. Thousands of miles away, across oceans and continents, another frog practices the same art of vanishing, but through the opposite means. In the dense, dripping rainforests of Southeast Asia, among the fallen leaves and shadows of buttress roots, the Malayan horned frog, Megaphryna suta, lies waiting. It does not shimmer. It does not glow. It deceives. Its entire body is a study in imitation, a sculpture of decay so perfect that even death itself would be fooled. The Malayan horned frog is larger than the glass frog, its body broad and angular, coloured in every shade of forest rot. Ochre, brown, burnt orange, even streaks of black like veins of fungus. Its head is sharply pointed, the snout elongated into a narrow tip that mirrors the curl of a dead leaf. The upper eyelids extend into triangular flaps, the horns that give it its name. Along its back, irregular ridges and wrinkles mimic the veins and tears of decomposing foliage. It spends its life on the forest floor surrounded by leaves identical to itself. During the day, it does not move. It becomes leaf, shadow, silence. At dusk, the deception awakens. Insects skitter across the leaf litter and the horned frog waits, its golden eyes half open, vertical pupils absorbing the last light. The air is heavy with the scent of rain and decay. Then, with a motion so sudden it looks unnatural, the frog's mouth opens. An enormous, jagged cavern lined with teeth-like ridges. The strike is instant, the aftermath invisible. The forest floor looks unchanged. What had been a dead leaf a moment ago is now a predator digesting its meal in peace. This frog's camouflage is not simply visual. The texture of its skin absorbs light differently depending on angle, replicating the matte softness of true leaf surfaces. Its behaviour completes the illusion, a perfect stillness, even when touched by wind or rain. Only the faint pulse at the base of the throat betrays life. Its patience is limitless. It may wait hours, even days, without moving, conserving energy until opportunity comes crawling across its own back. Unlike the glass frog, which is a creature of tenderness and light, the horned frog belongs to shadow. Its reproduction follows the rhythm of Southeast Asia's monsoons. When the rains begin, males call from the edges of puddles and forest pools. Their call is a deep, resonant croak that echoes like water dripping into a cavern, low, hollow, and strangely mournful. The females, drawn by the vibration, lay hundreds of eggs that adhere to submerged vegetation. Tadpoles emerge, flat-headed and transparent, feeding on organic debris in the water. As they grow, their colour darkens, and their bodies harden into miniature versions of their parents, already equipped for deception. Up close, the horned frog's face is a masterpiece of menace. The sharp snout projects forward like a dagger, and the eyes, bronze, lidless, unwavering, seem to pierce rather than see. Its body, though squat, exudes strength. The limbs end in broad, webbed feet tipped with blunt claws, ideal for digging through leaf litter or anchoring against sudden currents. When threatened, it opens its mouth wide, exposing the red interior in a display meant to startle predators. It may even lunge, producing a hiss that sounds almost like the rush of air escaping the soil. For something so still, its violence is astonishingly sudden. To the people who share its forests, in Malaysia, Borneo and Sumatra, the horned frog is a quiet legend. Some believe it to be a spirit of disguise capable of hiding from death itself. Hunters, moving through the jungle at night, speak of stepping on them by accident, only realizing too late that the leaf beneath their foot blinked. Folklore treats them with wary respect, as creatures that embody the forest's ability to deceive. Their presence is considered an omen of patience, a reminder that stillness can be power. Scientists have long admired Megaphryna suta as one of evolution's finest examples of mimicry. Unlike other camouflage species that merely match colour, the horned frog replicates form, texture, and behaviour. In laboratory tests, even trained observers fail to spot them among piles of actual leaves. It is camouflage elevated to art, the forest painting itself so perfectly that it fools even the hand that created it. Yet this perfection is fragile. Deforestation and the pet trade have thinned their numbers. Each time the forest floor is cleared, 1,000 disguises die unseen. When viewed side by side, the translucent glass frog and the opaque horned frog, one might think them opposites. but in truth, they are two halves of a single philosophy: invisibility through transformation. One dissolves into light, the other dissolves into shadow. The glass frog teaches that transparency can protect as much as armor. The horned frog teaches that stillness can conquer chaos. Between them lies a vision of the natural world as both mirror and mask, where survival depends not on strength, but on how well one disappears. Imagine the camera drifting through two worlds. First, the soft green glow of a rainforest canopy in Costa Rica, where a tiny glass creature rests beneath a leaf, its heart visible in the dim silver light. Then, the deep orange twilight of Borneo, where a single brown leaf on the ground shifts almost imperceptibly, and eyes open where there should be none. One frog hides by revealing itself, the other hides by pretending it was never alive, and both survive quietly, beautifully, without asking for our understanding. When the rain returns and darkness swells, the frogs resume their eternal performances. The glass frog clings to its leaf, trembling faintly as droplets slide over its transparent skin. The horned frog crouches beneath its canopy of death, patient as stone. Somewhere between them, the forest breathes. It does not prefer one over the other. To nature, both strategies are poetry. Two stanzas of the same survival hymn. To live unseen is to endure, and to endure is to be perfect, whether made of glass or of shadow. Every age of the earth invents its own miracles. Some are born from the soil, others from the stubborn refusal to obey it. As the forest grew taller and darker through the ages, some creatures learned that the only way to survive was not to hide or to fight, but to rise. Yet flight was never meant for frogs. They were made for mud and water, for still ponds and heavy air. But evolution, restless as the wind itself, found a loophole. In the dripping green cathedrals of Southeast Asia, frogs learned to glide between trees, spreading the webbed membranes of their toes like sails. In the cold, volcanic lakes of Mexico, another kind of rebellion took shape. A creature that refused to grow up, holding on to its youth and healing itself from every wound. One reached for the sky, the other outwitted death. The flying frog and the axolotl are two versions of the same defiance, the will of life to rewrite its limits, even when the world insists on gravity and decay. In the misty forests of Borneo and the Malay Peninsula, where rain never stops and the trees rise like pillars into the clouds, the flying frog, Rhacophorus nigrapalmatus, lives among the upper branches. To see one in motion is to question the laws of the body. It launches itself from a high branch, spreads its limbs wide and glides, 15 meters, sometimes more, through curtains of rain and shafts of dim green light. It does not fall, it drifts. The motion is slow, measured, almost graceful, like a leaf borne by invisible currents. When it lands, the sound is softer than a whisper, the impact absorbed by the pliant surface of wet leaves. For a few moments, the forest seems to hold its breath, as if acknowledging that this creature, small and fragile, has momentarily conquered air. The flying frog's body is a masterpiece of aerodynamics shaped by chance. Its limbs are long and muscular, ending in wide webbed feet that stretch between its fingers like the sails of a ship. These webs, often dark and translucent, are the secret of its flight. When extended, they catch air, turning the frog's entire body into a living parachute. The skin between its limbs glows faintly with veins of green and yellow, and when sunlight filters through, the membranes look like stained glass held to the light. The frog's back is a luminous emerald, slick with moisture, while the belly is pale cream, soft and smooth. The eyes are large, golden and forward-facing, giving it a perpetual expression of alert serenity, as though it is always calculating the next leap. Its habitat is the high canopy, a world few humans ever see. There, everything is vertical, trunks rising like towers, vines descending like ropes, light fractured into 1,000 shifting layers. The air smells of orchids and decay. Every surface glistens with condensation, and every movement risks a fall of 30 meters or more. The flying frog's entire existence depends on precision. The angle of a branch, the density of a gust, the distance between one tree and the next. At night, when storms roll across the forest, their calls echo from the treetops, deep, resonant croaks that seem to vibrate through the rain itself. They call not only for mates, but also, perhaps, to reassure themselves that they are still there, still suspended between heaven and earth. When the rains intensify, breeding begins. Males select leaves that hang over still water and use their hind legs to fold them into small cups. The females arrive, and the pair releases eggs into this makeshift cradle, sealing it with foam. The structure looks like a cloud caught in green, a soft white mass that swells with moisture. Days later, the foam collapses and the tadpoles slide into the water below, beginning the cycle again. Even reproduction here defies simplicity. It is an act of architecture, of foresight. The forest rains down death and renewal in equal measure, and the flying frog, with its webbed sails and foamed nests, endures by becoming both engineer and acrobat. To watch it glide at dusk is to witness the forest breathe. The frog leaps. Its limbs spread like the points of a star, and for an instant it seems weightless. It catches the air, not fighting it, but surrendering to it. The arc is smooth, precise, inevitable. It lands, folds its limbs, and vanishes again into the green. There is something transcendent in that motion, a quiet victory over gravity, a moment when the wet earth remembers the sky it came from, across an ocean and half a planet, beneath the grey waters of Lake Xochimilco in the Valley of Mexico. Another creature defies an entirely different law, the law of time. The axolotl, Ambystoma mexicanum, is not a frog, but a salamander. Yet it shares the amphibian lineage that binds all these stories. What makes it extraordinary is not where it lives, but how it lives. It never grows up. While most amphibians metamorphose from water-dwelling larvae into air-breathing adults, shedding their gills and taking to the land, the axolotl refuses. It remains forever in its juvenile form, retaining its feathery external gills, its finned tail, its aquatic habits. It is a child that never leaves the womb of the lake, a perpetual youth, a living contradiction to mortality. Its body is ghostly pale or mottled with shades of brown and grey, though in captivity it is often bred into a translucent pink-white, with red gills that look like plumes of coral. Those gills fan outward from each side of the head, delicate filaments that ripple with every movement, glowing faintly in the water like burning threads. The eyes are small and dark, giving the creature an expression of permanent wonder. It moves with slow grace, gliding through the water rather than swimming, as if carried by memory instead of motion. Its skin is soft and permeable, a fragile boundary between existence and dissolution. What truly sets the axolotl apart, however, is its ability to regenerate. Lose a leg, and it grows back. Lose a tail, an eye, even part of the heart or brain, and it rebuilds itself cell by cell until the wound disappears as though it had never been. In the language of science, this is called neoteny, the retention of juvenile traits into adulthood, but that word is too small for the miracle it describes. To the people of ancient Mexico, the axolotl was the embodiment of transformation itself, sacred to the god Xolotl, the twin of Quetzalcoatl, who refused to die when the gods demanded sacrifice and turned himself into a creature of the water instead. The myth says he hid beneath the surface, sprouting gills, living forever in the dark, ashamed and immortal. Every axolotl is a fragment of that rebellion, an echo of a god who escaped death by becoming something unendingly unfinished. In the old canals of Xochimilco, where the water is still and choked with reeds, the axolotl drifts like a thought between sleep and waking. The city of Mexico hums in the distance, its lights trembling on the horizon, yet beneath the surface there is silence, a world untouched by the rush of machines. The axolotl hunts slowly, consuming worms and small crustaceans, its mouth opening in a gentle suction rather than a bite. It does not struggle for survival so much as persist through it. Scientists have long been fascinated by its regenerative powers, seeing in it a key to human healing. In laboratories, researchers study its cells under microscopes, trying to learn how it rebuilds what should never grow again. The axolotl, indifferent to this attention, continues its patient existence, replacing whatever the world takes from it. But even immortality has limits. The lakes that once sustained the axolotl have shrunk to a fraction of their former size. Pollution and invasive species have clouded the waters. The canals that now bear tourists in painted boats once carried a sacred stillness. Wild axolotls are vanishing, perhaps numbering only a few hundred. Those that remain live mostly in captivity, their pale bodies glowing under artificial light. They survive in aquariums, classrooms and labs, symbols of both endurance and loss. The creature that refused to die may yet be undone not by nature, but by us. And still, even in decline, the axolotl embodies something timeless. When it drifts near the surface, its gills trailing like ribbons, it seems less like an animal and more like an idea. The idea that life can choose its form, that evolution is not a straight line but a spiral, returning to itself, refusing completion. It is the dream of the amphibian made literal, to remain between worlds, neither fully of the water nor of the land, suspended in perpetual transformation. Together, the flying frog and the axolotl reveal the extremes of what it means to live in defiance. One transcends gravity, the other transcends decay. The flying frog trusts air, the axolotl trusts time. Both are experiments in persistence, two small, soft creatures rewriting the rules of what their bodies can do. In their existence, we glimpse evolution's imagination, endless and unafraid. Imagine the camera rising from the flooded forests of Borneo into the night air, tracking a green shape gliding through rain. Then, a cut to still water, black and silent, where a pale form moves just beneath the surface, breathing through gills like scarlet feathers. Two worlds, two elements, one filled with flight, the other with stillness, yet both defined by the refusal to yield. The forest and the lake mirror each other, each holding a creature that has learned how not to fall. The flying frog lands softly on a leaf, folding its webbed sails, the rain dripping from its limbs like molten emeralds. The axolotl hovers motionless, its gills waving gently, its wounds already closing. Between them, a single truth hums in the quiet, that life is not satisfied with the boundaries it was given. It stretches, leaps, and regenerates. It falls and grows wings, it breaks and heals. When dawn comes, the forest and the lake glow the same colour, the pale green of persistence, and somewhere in both, unseen by human eyes, a heart beats against the laws of the possible, whispering the oldest rebellion of all to live, again and again, against everything that ends. Night returns to the forest like a memory. The air thickens, the canopy closes, and the rain begins again, soft at first, then insistent, tapping on every leaf as if the sky were reminding the earth to wake. In this sound lies the heartbeat of the planet, steady and endless. It is the rhythm that shaped every creature in these pages, the ones that shimmer, that hide, that crawl, that fly, that bleed, that cradle life within their own flesh. The frogs begin to call, one by one, their voices rising from puddles, trees, rivers and stones, blending into a single unbroken hymn. Some calls are high and trembling, others deep as thunder. Together they weave a music older than civilization, a language spoken not in words but in patience. It is the sound of a world still alive. Each species, each small existence, carries a note in that symphony. The golden poison dart frog, glowing like liquid sun in the shadows of Colombia. The blue one, humming softly in the Guiana forest like a jewel breathing. The black-legged cousin, pulsing with restrained danger. The cane toad, heavy with the consequences of our arrogance. The corroboree frog burning yellow in the snow. The mossy frog melting into Vietnamese stone. The giants of Africa, one moving stones with its legs, one sleeping for years beneath the cracked earth. The devils of the swamp, the screamers and the biters, the ones who survive by mouth and fury. The horned hunters and the bone breakers, the mothers who carry their children under their skin, the fathers who turn song into womb, the ghosts of glass, the deceivers of leaves, the ones who learn to fly, and the ones who learned to live forever. Each of them is a verse in a poem that evolution never stopped writing, and together they form the rain's refrain, a reminder that beauty and danger, tenderness and terror are threads of the same fabric. When you listen closely to that sound, really listen, not as a scientist or a spectator but as another animal under the same rain, you begin to understand what they are saying. They are not warning, not boasting, they are simply declaring presence. I am here, I breathe, I endure. It is the simplest declaration in the universe and the most profound. It is the same song that hums in our veins when we place a hand on our chest and feel the heart's small thunder. The rainforest does not sleep, even when you think it's quiet. The air vibrates with hidden lives, crickets grinding their legs together, moths brushing against bark, bats whispering above the canopy. The frogs are the metronome of that invisible orchestra, keeping time with their croaks, their trills, their sighs. Every drop of rain becomes a drumbeat, every echo between trees a verse. The forest is not just alive, it is awake. And through its pulse, one can feel the story of survival replayed endlessly. Somewhere in the dark, a glass frog clings beneath a leaf, its transparent belly glowing faintly with the moonlight. The heart inside it beats slowly, each pulse visible, fragile but certain. The frog doesn't know it's being watched. It doesn't need to. It simply exists. An exposed miracle, its body a cathedral of light and water. A few meters below, in the mud, a horned frog sleeps with the patience of stone waiting for movement. And deeper still, beneath the roots, the eggs of other frogs swell with new life, their jelly walls trembling with heartbeat. The forest is full of beginnings. Far away, on another continent, a male Darwin's frog sits beside a stream, throat swollen with life, releasing tiny offspring into the moss one by one. The Suriname toad, in the black water of the river, flexes her back as the last of her young swim free. These are not acts of affection in the human sense. There are no tears, no lullabies, but they are acts of devotion all the same. In them lies the essence of care, stripped to its most elemental truth, the willingness to be broken so that something else can continue. Rain intensifies. It beats on the leaves like applause, like grief, like eternity. The frogs respond, their chorus swelling into the sound of millions of small throats lifted toward the storm. In their voices is the joy of existence, raw, wild, unmeasured. Each one calls without knowing if it will be heard, without asking to be remembered. Yet we, listening from the edge of their world, remember them anyway. We record their calls, photograph their colours, study their poisons, try to preserve their fragile lineages. Because in them, we hear echoes of ourselves, creatures of chance, of brief brilliance, of stubborn persistence. Human beings once shared the same rhythm. Before we built walls and cities, before we named things and forgot why we named them, we too were bound to the song of the rain. Our skin, once damp with the same breath of the world, still remembers. That is why the croak of a frog on a summer night pulls at something ancient in us. It is not nostalgia, it is recognition. And yet, that chorus grows thinner each year. The forests shrink, the wetlands dry, the songs fade. The frogs, those small guardians of humidity and silence, vanish faster than we can name them. Disease, pollution, heat. The same poisons we scatter through the air and water seep into their delicate skins. They are the canaries of the planet's bloodstream, warning us with their silence when balance begins to tilt. Each vanished species is a note erased from the music of rain. Each extinction makes the world quieter, flatter, less forgiving. Still, the survivors sing. They always will, as long as there is water to echo them. Perhaps that is the truest lesson of their kind, that life will continue to find a rhythm. No matter how often it is silenced, whether it beats inside a transparent chest or under the cracked armour of a bullfrog, or within the lungs of something that will never grow old, the pulse remains. The song continues. In the end, the poison that once seemed a symbol of danger becomes something else, a kind of wisdom. In the hands of humans, it kills. In the skin of frogs, it protects. It is not evil, it is balance. Nature never created villains. Only chemistry, colour, instinct, and the endless negotiation between survival and surrender. The frogs were never monsters. They were mirrors. They showed us that beauty can kill, and that death can nurture life. They showed us that fragility can become armour, and that silence can carry the weight of thunder. As the camera pulls back, the forest fades into darkness again. The rain softens, the fog rises, and the last calls echo faintly across the water. Somewhere unseen, a frog leaps, a small arc of motion swallowed by night. The ripples spread outward, touching everything: a leaf, a root, a drop, a world. When you close your eyes, you can still hear it, the distant, patient croak that marks the boundary between sleep and awareness. It is the sound that has never stopped, from the first amphibian that crawled out of primeval mud to the last glass frog singing under a leaf tonight. The sound of rain and poison, of persistence and grace. And if you listen long enough, beneath the noise of the storm, beneath your own breathing, you might recognize what it really is. Not just the voice of frogs, but the heartbeat of life itself. So rest now. Let the rain speak for them. Let the forest hum its lullaby. In every drop that falls on your window, a million years of survival sing quietly. The world is still alive. The song goes on.